The top racers on their race-specific hydrofoil boards and race kites are doing 40 knots now, which is almost that's actually 50 miles an hour, which is way faster than I want to go.
Episode 289, Long Distance Kitesurfing with Bowen Dwelle. This episode is sponsored by Health IQ. If you're exercising regularly, don't you think you deserve a special rate on life insurance? Find out how much you can save by taking the health quiz for your adventure sport at healthiq.com/adventure. A few minutes on their site could save you a bunch on your life insurance. Get rewarded for all your hard work at healthiq.com/adventure. You're listening to the Adventure Sports Podcast, brought to you by 180 Tech. We talk with adventurers from around the globe to bring you the inspiration and motivation you need to get started in the outdoors or to keep you moving if you're already there. Now here's your host, Kurt Linville.
Hi friends, thank you again for listening to another episode of the Adventure Sports Podcast. I have a really fun one for you today. We have not covered this sport much on the Adventure Sports Podcast yet. We did one show on this, almost 2 years ago. And so I'm excited to hit it today because it's so fresh. Today we're talking about kite surfing, and we're talking about kite surfing with someone who has quite a lot of experience and even taking kite surfing to new levels. I'm excited to hear his stories and all about the sport. Bowen Dwelle, welcome to the program.
Thanks, Kurt. Great to be here.
Man, it's our pleasure. I have long enjoyed watching this sport, and I've never done it, but every time I'm at the coast or even on YouTube or something, I see people doing this kite surfing, and I'm just blown away. So many interesting dynamics involved in this skill set and in this adventure sport. So this is going to be a lot of fun today. But before we dive into the specifics, I really want to get the backstory. So who is Bowen Dwelle?
Yeah, thanks, Kurt. Well, someday means never, right? So get out there and try it. Hopefully
right.
we'll clue you in a little bit and encourage you to do that. I grew up right here in San Francisco. I was born and raised. I'm a San Francisco native, and I have lived other places, but I spent most of my life living right here in and around the city of San Francisco.
San Francisco, so that would be a fairly easy place, I would think, to become a kite surfer.
San Francisco is definitely a world-class sailing venue. It's just the city by the bay, and we have wind, one way or another, pretty much all year. And we have a very reliable, strong sailing season from, March deep into September. And then again with storms on and off through the winter and that sort of thing. So yeah, it's definitely a sailor's city. And I grew up sailing here, and that was, one of the threads that eventually led me to kite surfing.
Well, before we dive too deeply into this, we should probably just define what kite surfing is for people who don't know. So take us there. Tell us what kite surfing is all about.
Yeah, sure. Kite surfing is, it does take a little bit of describing. Most people are familiar with sailing, right? And that's where I usually start. It is, I think, from a physics point of view and from a sport point of view, a form of sailing. It's just that the sail, unlike a sailboat where the sail is attached to a mast, a vertical spar, which is sticking up out of the boat. Or in the case of a windsurfer, a windsurfer is a direct evolution of a sailboat. You still have a mast, right, that sticks up off the board, that's attached to the board. With a kite, or kite surfing or kiteboarding, the sail is a kite. It's up in the air. It doesn't require any fixed spars to suspend or maintain the shape of the kite, and which results in a number of differences. The whole rig is lighter and smaller, and you can move the sail in 3 dimensions, right? Because just like you can fly, a kite around the sky, well, that's what we can do too. We can fly that kite all over the place, and use it to generate apparent wind. We can use it to kind of grab, gusts and puffs of wind, or get wind that is a little bit higher up in the air. Like often there's a wind gradient that results in the wind right at the surface of the water being weaker. So it's often the case that we can get around where other forms of sailing craft cannot. Right. So kite surfing is one way or another. It's some type of a board with a kite as the propulsion, and the kite is tethered to us, to the rider, with a harness that's very similar to a windsurfing harness. So there's a harness and a hook at your waist, and the force of the kite, the pull of the kite, is transmitted through that harness.
Very good description. The first time I saw this, it reminded me of something out of a children's story, right? Where some kid goes up on the hill with a kite and the wind carries him away and he has some amazing adventure. And I thought, who dreamed this up? The imagination it takes to figure this out and to figure out how to make it work. But it does work. It's amazing how well it works. Do you know about the history of it?
Yeah, a bit. And, it's great that you use the word magic. It is a really magical feeling. Of course, many sports are sort of magical, but people who surf, any form of surfing, right, where if anyone who does any form of surfing is familiar with that gliding feeling, right, the feeling of gliding across the water, which is a very magical feeling. And with kite surfing, we have the gliding across the water feeling, combined with the magical feeling of being pulled along by a sail, essentially, right? And even more magical is that the sail is a kite up in the sky, right? And it doesn't weigh anything, and you can fly it all over the place. So it is really magical. Who came up with it? Well, what popped into my head is the French, right? The French have a long tradition of sailing and of innovating in sailing and of inventing exotic forms of sailing and other sports. And I'm not an expert on the history of kite surfing, but there was kind of a parallel evolution where I think it was a couple of French brothers, the Ligonier brothers, and then also some Americans were having similar ideas at similar times, and started. And they were all windsurfers and sailors and surfers and that sort of thing. And so in the late 80s, early 90s, mid 90s, there was a sort of a proto sport of kiteboarding. And of course, the equipment gradually evolved, and then evolved more and more quickly. And really I didn't take it up until the mid 2000s, until 10 or 12 years ago. Right after a time when there had been a real leap in the evolution of the sophistication and also the safety of the equipment, which was a real key progression. And so now the gear is amazing. It works fantastically well, and it's the gears also tends to be it's reliable, it's predictable, it's quite safe to use.
Well, I know it just looks amazing to see. And I think part of it that amazes me about it is that you're working in this fluid environment with two different types of fluids. You've got the liquid ocean or freshwater, as the case may be, right? But then you also have this air, this wind that you can't see that compresses and changes its speed and its angle and its velocity. And essentially it's invisible, right? So you've got these two fluids that sometimes are working with each other, sometimes against each other, and as the kite surfer, you have to read everything. You have to read the water, you have to read the wind, and you have to read your kite and how to get those things all organized to do what you want to do. And I think that's the dynamic of it that blows my mind. There's just so much going on.
Yeah, that's very interesting that you hit upon that, very perceptive of you. It is a complicated sport because of those four elements that are involved. That is the water and the air, and then the pieces of equipment that go with those. So the board in the water, and the kite in the air. And so you have 4 things at least to manage. Whereas with, let's say, surfing, you have the board in the water.
Right.
Now, the strange thing is that surfing is harder. Like to get really good as a surfer, and even to have any fun as a surfer, I think it's harder. Because you have to balance on the board. It's just much more finesse. You have to paddle, of course, with your arms and your shoulders. If you've ever done any surfing, you know how painful that is if you don't do it regularly. So surfing is difficult but simple. Kite surfing is easier but more complicated.
Right. Physically easier is what you're saying.
Yeah, and kind of easier to have fun doing it. It's complicated. It takes you have to take some commitment, some time to learn. But once you get over that initial learning curve and you're up and riding, you have this wave of euphoria, right? Because you feel that magic and you're getting pulled along. And from that point on, you're not struggling as much. You're progressing very quickly, and you have the feeling of doing it. Right. Whereas something like surfing, I mean, you could go for years and still only, catch a wave once in a while. At least that's my experience.
Right. Well, there's something to that, though, because when you're surfing, you just use the term catch a wave. That's the goal. That's the challenge. You have to have the right wave. You have to be in the right place to get on it, and you have to know how to make it go, right, to take advantage of that. And so when you have some other kind of propulsion that helps you out a little bit, in this case, it's the kite and the wind, right? It allows you then to kind of manipulate everything a little bit more. Yeah,
and it opens up many more options and possibilities in terms of what you can do with the sport and as an athlete, right? You can, you're not to draw too many comparisons between, with surfing, but, with kite surfing, you can go ride flat water. You can ride waves, you can race, you can ride long distances, you can do crossings, you can do all kinds of stuff. So you need wind, but wind is more, there's more wind around than there are good waves. That's for sure, for one thing.
Okay. Yeah, I'll take your word for it. I think you're probably right about that for sure. But, everyone talks about trying to find the perfect wave, but the wind, anytime I go to the coast, there's wind. It just seems like that's there.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly. It's, one way or another, there are a lot of places with wind that may or may not have good waves. Good waves are dependent on swell, which is just not a constant thing. And so again, using the wind as a tool opens up all these other possibilities for us as kite surfers.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned before the show that the sport itself has changed a bit. That what's state of the art today is really advanced compared to how it started out. Can you illustrate that for us a little bit?
Yeah, sure. Well, sports go through different stages of progression and evolution. All sports do, both in terms of equipment and technique. And with kite surfing, let's see, if we think back, well, I think that the most prevalent image that most people would conjure up of kite surfing is freestyle, someone doing tricks, doing all kinds of flips and rotations and spins and that sort of thing. And that does continue to be a popular discipline in the sport. But perhaps, well, certainly not the only one and not the only major discipline in the sport. Wave riding began to become much more popular, I'd say about 10 or so years ago. And that was partly due to improvements in equipment that made it just more possible. The equipment became better suited to riding in waves. And also it was just kind of these things are also a bit of a fashion and trend sort of thing. So it just also wave riding took off a bit more at that time. And so that's become a major discipline in the sport. So in addition to like a freestyle world tour, there's a wave kitesurfing world tour and competitions all over the world in that discipline. There's also racing. Racing has emerged also over the last 10 years, but more and more, so much more so over the last 5 years. And by racing, I mean course racing in the same way that sailboats, that you do sailboat racing around a course. And there's specialized racing equipment, boards and kites for kite course racing. And most recently, just as sailboat racing has evolved, and of course, if you're familiar with what's been going on with the America's Cup over the past 2 seasons in particular, all the AC, the America's Cup has gone to hydrofoils, and that coincided with another wave of development in hydrofoil board development. And so just about the same time, kitesurf course racing went to hydrofoil boards as well. And that revolutionized the racing scene. It also led to what now you're seeing the last literally just 2 years is the explosion of people riding hydrofoil boards, not just for racing, but for free riding and recreationally.
Let's dive into that a little bit, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
That's fascinating. So a hydrofoil in the right conditions is going to be far more efficient. But how come? Why is that? I mean, what does a hydrofoil look like compared to the standard board, its predecessor? And how does it work dynamically differently? Yeah,
it's really totally different from a physics point of view. So if you picture a board that we might ride, just picture any surfboard, like a 6-foot long surfboard that you might paddle into a normal wave. And many of us kite surfers ride surfboards like that. A board like that, you know, as you're traveling over the surface of the water, the board is planing on the surface of the water, and it's, in a way, it's not doing all that much. I mean, you're pushing the board around, you're generating a little bit of lift with the fins, just like surfboard fins that push down, extend vertically down from the tail of the board.
Right.
And you use those to steer around and that sort of thing. And you use the edge of the board to help generate kind of lateral resistance to go upwind, et cetera. But you're gliding over the surface of the water, and that creates a lot of friction. Until you do something, until you get off the surface of the water, and that's what a hydrofoil does. So a hydrofoil is, perhaps you've seen them in the America's Cup. Those are like J foils or kind of L foils that extend down kind of like a J shape from the hulls of the AC boats. Ours are more of in a T shape, so there's a central mast that extends down from the bottom of the board, and then there are horizontal wings, usually a larger front wing and a smaller back wing, and this is all fabricated from carbon fiber, so it's quite very lightweight and very slim. And efficient, hydrodynamically efficient. So that extends down from the bottom of the board about 1 meter. And then you have the wings extending horizontally from the bottom of the mast. And so with just a little bit of speed, you pop up off of the surface of the water because of the lift that the hydrofoil generates in the water as it moves through the water. And the board, you and the board that you're standing on, you're like levitated out of the water entirely, so that you're no longer skimming across the surface of the water. You're no longer touching the surface of the water at all. And the mast of the hydrofoil is extending down from the board, pierces the surface of the water, and the wings of the hydrofoil remain below the surface of the water. It all sounds pretty complicated, but when you're doing it, it just works. It's amazing.
You're flying. That's awesome.
You're flying, and that is it works on the same principle as flight. And getting back to how you brought up the two different fluids really that we're dealing with, right? Water is about 800 times as dense as air, and so just like you can. A hang glider is big enough to suspend the weight of one person in the air. Well, a little hydrofoil that's only about, 1.5 feet wide or something is big enough to suspend the weight of a person because it generates 800 times as much lift.
Wow.
Because the water is that much denser. So the feeling at the end of the day, right, once you figure out how to ride this thing, and there is sort of a very steep learning curve.
I can imagine.
To figure out how to ride the foil, because it's all just the dynamic, balance of your body. But once you get over that learning curve, you're flying. You're flying over the surface of the water. You're not getting bashed and bumped around by whatever chop is on the surface of the water. You're traveling you can travel much faster. And it's much more efficient, so you need less power from the kite, which means you can use smaller kites, and which means you can also kite with the foil board in much less wind. So the threshold of wind that's required before you can get out there and get going is much, much lower.
That is so cool. I don't have a lot of context for this as far as the surfing part goes, but I know from skiing what a difference it is to be bumping along on the hard pack versus when you get enough powder that you start floating in the medium of the powder. And now you're not on the hard surface anymore. You're in a fluid environment again. The soft champagne powder does that. And you literally are flying on a pillow of fluid. And so that's the only context I have for what you're saying. But the difference between skiing that powder and skiing on the hard pack is huge. So I can imagine it's got to be that way for you on your hydrofoil board.
Yeah, and that's a good comparison, and it's a comparison that others have made as well. That feeling of when you're in 2 to 3 feet of deep light powder, and you're just sailing through that, right, and making these smooth carves and floating turns, right. And your board, or your skis or your snowboard in that case, aren't touching anything hard. You're just floating through this, again, sort of semi-fluid powder.
Right.
And that is a similar feeling when you're up on the foil and riding, carving. It's an incredible feeling. Yeah, so it's revolutionized, like I said, first of all, racing, because it's so much more efficient and faster. But also for the recreational rider, it's a hell of a lot of fun. And again, it expands the possibilities. You can kite in less wind. You can go longer distances. It just creates more possibilities for us kite surfers. So that's one of the latest. That's the big innovation that's happening right now in the kite surfing world, and it's super exciting.
You're getting me excited just talking about it. I love the sound of this. Hey friends, Kurt here. We might have the healthiest audience of any podcast on the planet. I don't know. It just seems to me that people that are out there doing adventure sports have to be pretty healthy. They appreciate being healthy, and they love to get out there and move. And we recently got a new sponsor, Health IQ, and they reward people who love to be healthy. This is cool stuff. So, do you exercise 5 times a week? If so, then you probably think you deserve a different rate on your life insurance. You're not the smoker. You're not the one who's out there abusing his or her body and having a lot of health issues that result. Instead, you're out there moving and eating right and doing right things. So shouldn't your premiums be lower? Health IQ uses science and data to secure special rates on life insurance for health-conscious people like cyclists, runners, strength trainers, vegans, and more. Matter of fact, research shows that those who frequently exercise with some intensity have a 22% lower cancer risk, a 56% lower heart disease risk, and up to a 34% lower risk of an early death. So why not get rewarded for that? Historically, you get penalized for your family history, body mass index, and other attributes, but you don't get rewarded for your health-conscious lifestyle. Well, Health IQ does reward you for your health-conscious lifestyle with special rates on life insurance. How cool is that? To get more information and a free quote, go to healthiq.com/adventure and make sure you do use that /adventure. That makes sure that they know where you heard about them on the Adventure Sports Podcast. So healthiq.com/adventure. For the kite surfers out there that are listening, I apologize in advance. I want to go back and address all of us who haven't done it before and ask all the beginner questions, because I know people have them, and anyone who's done this will kind of chuckle, but we have to cover this ground. Beginner question number one, how hard is it? How hard is it to learn to do this?
Yeah, great question. Well, like I was saying, it's complicated, but it's not that hard. And that's how I often put it to people. It's complicated. It does take some dedication, right? But if you put in, let's say, a week, right? The best thing to do is take a week, go somewhere where the water's warm and there's consistent wind. And ideally it's and it's a good place to learn, which would be a big, shallow area. So the Outer Banks of North Carolina, Cape Hatteras, that area, for example,
right,
is probably the best place in the United States to go learn to kitesurf. And go to someplace like that for a week, and by the end of the week, you'll be up and riding. And once you get that feeling, and the ability to do acquire the basic skills, then you can, wherever it is you live, you can go back home and you be self-sufficient and progress from there on your own. So I don't know, how hard is it? You can be having fun in a week, and there are lots of other things that take a lot longer than that, right?
So are you telling us that
some things, it's
a butt kicker for the first 2 or 3 days then?
Yeah, it has that reputation, but also the equipment, there's some misconceptions or some perceptions that some people had from kind of the early days of kiteboarding, where the equipment was just not as good. The safety mechanisms, the release mechanisms had not been evolved yet. And also the kites, literally the kite designs were just not as sophisticated. And so it used to be that learning, you really did get yanked around a lot. And you got teabagged, right? As you're learning, you'd crash the kite and then you'd get dragged through the water, and that just went on over and over again. But again, the equipment has evolved. And so, especially if you have your kind of athletic wits about you, and you've done other sports of various sorts, and you're comfortable in your body, and you're game to learn something new. Some people, you go out and be up and riding in a basic way, in a couple, 3 hours. So I would not say, I'm not going to back up the idea that you're going to get bashed around for 2 or 3 days. Not necessarily.
Okay.
I think it's improved from the early days.
Well, that's encouraging at least, right? So then I have to
Yeah.
ask the next question, and beginner question number, I guess, was that 3 now? How hard is it to learn how to fly the kite, to master that?
Yeah, well, that's what I was just going to say, is that for most people is the big hurdle, I think, in terms of skills that they have to acquire. If you're not a sailor, right, then you're not familiar with the feeling of how a sail, you're not familiar with how a sail works or the feeling of controlling a sail. And even if you are a sailor, a kite is a bit different, but it is basically a sail. And so if you're a sailor or a windsurfer, or you've done any sort of kite sport, you're going to have a big advantage. If you're coming out completely green and you've never sailed and you don't have any sense for how the wind works, that's another piece of being a sailor. You don't know how to read the wind or feel the wind, and you haven't gained that intuitive understanding of how strong the wind is, how gusts work, that all that sort of stuff that becomes second nature. Then your learning curve is going to be longer in terms of dealing with the kite. Even so, I would say if someone who's brand new to it, if they're dedicated and they love it, and they continue to enjoy it as they're learning, that in their first year, let's say their first season of kite surfing, they could be having fun and able to ride in not any conditions, but in a very wide variety of conditions.
Well, speaking of the conditions, beginner question, again, it has to pop up all the time. Can this kite just catch a huge gust and take off with you? I mean, is it going to bash you into the rocks or take you so high in the air that you don't want to come back down? I mean, how does that work?
Yeah, the short answer is no. Again, the equipment has evolved, and so in the early days, there were stories of and examples of that happening with people, and even so, it was quite rare, and really due to user error, But the way the kites work, it's just like a sail on a sailboat. You can sheet in and out. Okay, so you have control over how much of the wind's power you are capturing by controlling the angle of attack of the kite, just like the angle of a sailboat's sail. And if a big gust comes along, well, you just sheet out or even just let go of the bar for a minute. And modern kites are such that they're basically completely depowered if you just let go of the bar. And then all you have to do is reach out and grab the bar again.
So it kind of goes to a flight neutral position where it's not yanking on you anymore.
Exactly. And so when you see people doing big jumps, I mean, they're doing those jumps under their own control. And when you hear a story about someone who gets yanked into the air or into the rocks or whatever, and it does happen, but that's user error. And that's the same as, someone crashing their bicycle, off the side of the road. Right. Or any other kind of user error kind of situation with a sport.
Well, here's a question for you. I mean, a lot of listeners, they've done a boogie board, or maybe they've done a surfboard, or maybe they water ski, whatever it is. Maybe it's a wakeboard, but they kind of get the feeling of, okay, I've got a board that planes on the water. But does the kite help you to balance on that board, or does it complicate the balance?
It makes it much easier, actually. It's because, first of all, you're not balancing your entire weight on the board. The kite is suspending you, taking some of your weight with an upwards vector, right, of its force, and you're never trying to balance on the board at a dead stop. You're always, you're moving. It's kind of like more like water skiing, where as you use the energy of the kite to pop yourself out of the water, you're already starting to move, and so you're not really so much having to balance on the board. It just kind of happens. You're just moving forwards as when you're riding a bike. It kind of balances itself as long as it's moving, right? So it helps quite a lot. That's part of the reason I say that surfing is a lot harder, because balancing on a surfboard at that moment when you're paddling and you're just starting to catch the wave, and the wave is just starting to push you a little bit, and then you have to hop up, from the prone position onto your feet. At that moment, you're still moving pretty slowly, and it's a very unstable moment, and that's usually when I fall off. So with kite surfing, you don't really have that moment. It disappears with the energy of the kite.
I like it. So it's kind of holding you up as it accelerates, and then you've got that speed that you need.
Yeah, and then you're just like, wow, magic.
Awesome. I have two more novice questions that I have to get answers for. The first one is, how fast can you go?
Yeah, that's an awesome question. People always ask that. The answer is you can go very fast if you want to. Most people don't want to go as fast as it's possible to go. On the top racers on their race specific hydrofoil boards and race kites are doing 40 knots now, which is almost fit. That's actually 50 miles an hour, which is way faster than I want to go or need to go. Typically, recreation, or what I'm on, even on my foil, which is not a race foil, it's not designed for racing, it's designed for free riding and carving and turning and that sort of thing. I'm doing more like 20 knots, like literally half of that speed, and that's plenty fast. 20 knots, about 25 miles an hour. That's plenty fast. And on a normal board, like a surfboard, you might be doing, 20 miles an hour or even 15. It just depends. There's a range, of course. It depends on what you're doing. So there's quite a range. You don't need to be doing that. It just depends on what you're interested in,
Right. Well, that sounds amazing. Yeah. I mean, I've water skied at all of those speeds, and I know what it feels like to hit the water at all of those speeds. And the 40 knots. I mean, now you've got a kite either that's going to help or make it worse. I don't know, but I can imagine going down hard at 40 knots and trying to get that kite in the neutral position and quit tumbling across the surface of the water and not getting tangled up in the lines and beat up too badly. I mean, what is that like?
Yeah. I mean, that kind of speed hitting the water is, it's hard. The kite can't help actually once you get, to the advanced kind of expert level, because as you start to crash, sort of, you can, if you're lucky or really skilled, you can use the kite to kind of, grab the power of the kite and kind of suspend yourself in the air and control the crash, and maybe the board and, kind of crashes out from underneath you or whatever. But that's not always the case. And, people do go down hard in these, especially in these, when they're racing, but in general, you're, let's say, cruising along at, even 25 miles an hour, that's, you're going to have some impact. You got to be careful. Depending on what you're doing, you might wear an impact vest or a helmet. Certainly racing, they wear helmets.
Well, I'm gonna claim that this is my last novice question, but I'm sure I'm going to ask more without even knowing it. But here's my last novice question that I know about, and that is going against the wind. If you go out somewhere and you need to get home again, what do you do?
Yeah, just like sailing, the physics of sailing are what permit you to sail upwind. It's for someone who's not a sailor and hasn't experienced that, it's hard to understand. But it's the same basic principle, physical principle of lift, that an airplane wing is generating lift, a sailboat sail or a kite is generating lift. It's actually not just pulling you along, right? It's not just getting pushed downwind, pushed along by the wind. It's actually, again, it's working like a wing, and it's pulling itself. That lift is pulling the wing or the sail or the kite forwards. And again, the physics allow that to actually pull you upwind into the wind to a certain extent. And your upwind angle, your maximum upwind angle, depends on the type of kite or sail, that you might be using, and also the type of board, because the board can also generates lift in the water. And so, and that's what tacking is all about, right? If you've ever heard, a sailboat has to tack to go upwind. It goes one way at an angle, and then it tacks across the head of the wind through the wind, and goes the other way at an angle, and gradually makes progress up into the wind, right?
Sure.
Same with a kiteboard or a kite surfing situation. Again, just depending on the type of kite and the type of board, we can always go upwind to some extent. And now with the hydrofoils, it's another advantage that hydrofoils have, is that they're incredibly efficient and they generate tons and tons of lift. And so we can go upwind like never before, which again opens up new possibilities for us in terms of riding.
So what you're saying is it's a whole lot different than the bed sheet that I tied to the broomstick on the inner tube.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly right. That you're just going to get, and you ended up on that island and you were stuck there for a week, and,
Right.
Luckily you had like a jar of peanut butter and a loaf of bread, and your parents, were really glad to see you when you made it back.
Oh, that's cool. I get the idea of the wing, though. It's not that the kite is dragging you then. It's that it actually is creating a lateral force that you can angle and use to pull you into the wind a little bit and that kind of thing. It makes sense, just like sailing. Matter of fact, I have to bring up the Adventure Sports Podcast is brought to you by 180 Tack. Where did that come from?
Hey, there you go.
We chose that name because we love the idea of changing directions and flying with the wind. But anyway.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, I was going to ask you about that name, actually, because, of course, it is a sailing reference.
Yep.
If you're enjoying the Adventure Sports Podcast with episodes twice a week and want to help support the show and keep it going, go check out our ASP member deals site. For as little as $4.95 a month, you can enjoy some adventure discounts while supporting our cause. Go to members.adventuresportspodcast.com and sign up for a monthly plan at $4.95 a month, or save a little with the annual plan and get your free 180 stove. Thanks for listening, guys.
By now you certainly know who Bent Gate is. That's for a great reason. Bent Gate Mountaineering has been sponsoring the Adventure Sports Podcast almost from the beginning, and we really appreciate that. They've made it possible for all the great shows to continue coming your way. We want to say thanks by reminding you to go to them for your backcountry gear. If you live in Colorado, then just stop by their store in Golden. If not, go to bentgate.com. They have what you need, from the latest ultralight gear to the tried and true classics for climbing, hiking, and camping, like Arc'teryx, Hilleberg, Nemo, Western Mountaineering, and many more. Need advice? They have you covered there too. Their staff are passionate adventurers who can offer help from their own experiences. Bentgate also hosts lots of events and speakers. Check out their website to see the schedule and to see all of their products. Help take care of the Adventure Sports Podcast by getting your gear from Bentgate Mountaineering. Well, we've got to talk about some of the things that you have done with this amazing sport. You've done such a perfect job of describing it to us. I feel like I've had my first lesson now. All I need is the equipment and a good breeze and a little bit of water, right? But you have done some amazing trips where you are covering vast distances kite surfing. So instead of like, okay, I went out on the lake and I moved around, or I went out and I came back again, you're traveling with this. I mean, you're treating this like it's maybe a bicycle that you could cover a continent with.
Yeah, absolutely right. There are, there are certain places in the world, and it depends on the wind conditions and the geography, and also to some extent the climate, and other factors. But there are some places in the world where it is possible to do long distance journeys by kite, much in the way that you would travel down the coast somewhere by sailboat. That's kind of what we're doing in some parts of the world. And it's also similar to what you might do, on a bicycle or long distance backpacking, or even similar to what some paragliders do in what they call volbiv, which is like fly and camp, or Volvisa, which is fly and then use your Visa card to stay at a little hotel, and then fly and then use your Visa card to stay at a little hotel. So we do both of those. And the place where I've done it most is on the coast of Brazil, the northern coast of Brazil, which is, because of a number of reasons, is the perfect place to do long distance kite surfing. It's warm, right? It's close to the equator. The water's warm, the air's warm, and if you look at a map and look at the northern coast of Brazil, it slopes kind of from the west northwest to the east southeast, and it's right in the path of the Atlantic trade winds, which come from the east to the west across the Atlantic there. And so all along that coast, you have steady winds. So you got warm water, warm air, steady winds, sandy beaches, good food, friendly people, and Brazil's a big country. So there's more than 1,000 miles. I mean, there's a very long distance of coastline there that you can travel down with relatively, with a relatively reasonable degree of possibility. I mean, there's still a lot of challenges involved, but at least it's possible. The more possible that it is. Yeah.
All of our adventure travelers just woke up. They're like, what? What? Say that again? What? So how do you carry gear if you wanted to camp? Can you do that?
Yeah, you can. And I have done one trip like that so far, where we carried everything that we needed. And again, because of the climate, you don't need to carry very much. You really, in the water's warm enough, you can just wear board shorts. And when you get out of the water, you really just need like a dry t-shirt and maybe a fleece or something like that, for the evening. And you can sleep in a hammock, which is very small, weighs very little. You get what's called a garimpero, which is like a travel hammock made out of, nylon material. Or you use some cash or a Visa card and, stay in a little local inn of some sort. Because there are towns all on the coast. And so you can kind of do it either way. But yeah, it is possible to carry everything you need. And we use waterproof backpacks to carry what little equipment we need with us. Most of it's like cameras and batteries, because these days, if you don't capture it on film, or on an SD card, it hasn't happened, right? So
right. Well, I just envision you guys coming in I mean, someone's on the beach, right, doing what you do on the beach, and then they see you way the heck out there somewhere, and then you're getting slightly bigger, and what is that guy doing? And then you stop at the beach, and you come in, you walk up, and you're like looking for that little bite of lunch or something. Dude, where did you come from? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do, and it's really amazing to arrive somewhere that way and to be able to say to yourself or whoever asks you, well, we came from up the coast. Well, where did you come from? And they usually say the next town or the other end of the beach or something, and we'll say, well, no, we came from this place that's like 100 kilometers, up the beach, for example. And that's a pretty normal day for us long distance kiting. 50 to 70K is pretty easy. It's a short day. 100K is a moderately long day, and you can do longer than that, 120, 150. There are other guys, there are always some people that are trying to push the extreme of whatever angle that they're into. And so there are people who try to set, distance records, right, of how long they can go in a particular day. That's not my particular interest. My interest is the long distance experience and the journey, the experience of going from place to place. And what you just alluded to is that, you wake up in the morning, you might be, camped on a beach somewhere or staying in a little local village, and you set up your kite and you get in the water, and that's it. You just leave. You don't need anything else. You don't have anything else. And at some point later in the day, you decide where you want to stop, and you pull up into the beach and put your feet on the sand, and there you are. And so it's
nice.
Yeah, it's amazing. So we do travel, a long way, but we're not necessarily trying to travel. We're not trying to necessarily set records, per day or that sort of thing.
Well, let's do a little math here. 100K would be what? 64 miles. And if you're going 20 knots on average, that's 23 miles per hour. So we're talking about less than 3 hours, around 3 hours, and you could be where you wanted to be. And that's a big day. That's 100K.
Yeah, the math works out a little bit differently because even going downwind, we are tacking to some extent. So we're not going in a dead straight line, first of all.
Gotcha.
We're tacking back and forth. And then, of course, there's some variation in your speed. You often, we are stopping here and there along the way. And there's, of course, variations in the, which way the coastline is going. You have to go out around a point or, in through a bay or something like that. And so what we normally use as a guideline is somewhere between 20 and 25 kilometers per hour over ground. And so that's not speed over the water, that's like speed down on the map down the coast. So, if I'm looking at the map, and it's 50, or let's say it's 80K to the village that I want to get to, that's about 50 miles. I'm going to probably figure that's going to take me more or less 4 hours, maybe less than 4 hours. So 100K a day, you're probably going to be in the water sailing or kiting for 5 hours at least. So you end up, you're in the water, quite a long time because you have to stop and eat at some point or points. And, again, we're not necessarily trying to set distance records. And so, I want to enjoy myself. Actually, I want to have time to enjoy where I've gotten up in the morning and where I'm getting in the afternoon.
Well, I think that might be what makes it so great. But I have to say this: we talked to a lot of thru hikers and a lot of different backpackers. I'm the backpacker who likes to see and experience where I am. So I don't go for huge distance, although I do go very long days. But then there are the people that are trying to cover a certain distance in, a certain number of weeks or something. And for them, it's all about the miles, And both ways of backpacking are legit, totally legit. It's what you enjoy doing.
Yeah.
And what you're describing, that would be the way I'd want to do it. It'd be like, oh, look at that canteen over there. I'm going to stop here, grab some lunch, sit in the shade for a while. You know what I mean? I think that would be awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a real, you get aspects of both, and you drew the parallel with through hiking, and you could say the same about, long distance cycling or running or any sport where you're traveling. You can put your head down and try to make as many miles as you can, either because you want to or you need to. But with your head down, kind of literally, you're not going to see and experience as much of the place. You might have more of an endurance experience, more of a physical trial kind of. And that's, some people, that's more what they want.
Right.
For me, it's a balance of the two, and the physicality of it is a big part of what I enjoy, but I want to have my head up so I can be looking around, enjoying the incredible geography that I'm passing through. And yeah, if I see a cool looking village or a beautiful beach or, somewhere I want to stop, that I can stop and exactly hang out there or meet some people or have something to eat or circle back. If there's a good, I come around a point and there's a wave there to ride. I want to hang out there for, 10, 20 minutes and ride the wave before continuing on.
Oh, that's fun. That's really fun. So how long of distances do you go on these trips?
Not
per day. I mean, for like the whole trip.
Yeah, total. Yeah. I mean, I've done a couple of 400K trips. I've done a couple of 600. So, 4, 5, 600K, that's what it's been for me in Brazil. But you could really do, you put it together however you want to. Someone might only want to ride, 10, 20, 30 miles in a day, right? And, and if you have the time, that's the other, the time is certainly a factor for all of us one way or another. Most people don't have a month to just go take off and kind of work their way slowly down the coast somewhere. If you do, yeah, well, I mean, do that. In a week, right, you could do shorter hops and do, a couple, 200 or 300K, or if you're pushing it and doing 100K days, then you could do, 500, 600, something like that.
That's cool. I never dreamed that kite surfing could be a mode of travel. I always thought of it as something you did out in the waves. I'm out from the beach, I'm coming back to the beach. I always thought of it that way. So to do it the way you're doing it, that just opens up a whole new world. It's like, dang, this is really cool stuff. Exciting to me. So I got to ask another novice question. Here we go. How far out do you go? I mean, you could go way the heck out there, I guess.
Yes, and you can. In general, you, just as with sailing, I would say, you don't go offshore any great distance unless you have a reason to, because the risks increase.
Right.
And so if, like on the coast of Brazil there, or in the Philippines, I was in the Philippines shooting another a TV series, a kitesurfing TV series earlier this year. Unless we're crossing from somewhere to somewhere else, then we're staying within sight, and ideally within, a distance that you might at least theoretically be able to swim right from shore. So, a mile's kind of far enough.
Sure.
Then again, because once you get this in your mind that, you can use the kite as a form of transportation and use it to get from place to place, you look at the map or you look out at the horizon and you see an island over there and you think, oh, I'm going to go to that island, or across to that other piece of land or whatever it is. And so we do end up doing that quite a bit too. And there are lots of places in the world that have super cool crossings to do. and where even if it's might be just a few miles, there's a place down in Baja California that's very popular for kiting. The town of La Ventana, and there's an island off of La Ventana that just makes a super fun afternoon. You stick a couple of beers in your wetsuit and you kite over to the island and stop and have a beer and kite back, and it's irresistible. When you see something like that, and then there are much bigger crossings that that people are doing. So 50 miles, 100 miles. Mitu Montero, who's a pro kiter from the islands of Cabo Verde, he just did a journey where he kited from, there's I think 9 or something principal islands in the Cabo Verde group, and he last year connected all the islands together and chained them by kite. And some of those, were I think 100-mile crossings, something like that.
Wow, substantial stuff. Well, you know what? You mentioned films. We've got to talk about the film stuff you do, because I know that our listeners are going to want to see this, right? It's great to hear about it, but man, I'd love to be able to see that. And I also want to talk to you about this idea of intuition that you're coming up with that grew out of this kite surfing. But first, let's go back to the films. You did Surfin' Sim in Brazil. Tell people what that was.
Yeah, totally. Thanks for asking. And yeah, it's one of those things that it's one thing to try and describe what you're doing, and it's another thing to be able to show people. So I'm really excited that we have something to show. So last summer, I was part of a project with myself and 5 other athletes, so a team of 6 kite surfers and a small film crew, and we shot one of these long distance trips in Brazil, on the coast of Brazil, about 600 kilometers over the course of about a week and a half. We got the backing of Canal Off, which is an outdoor sports oriented media company and television channel in Brazil, and Surfin' Sim, which is a company that organizes long-distance kitesurfing trips there on the northern coast of Brazil. And we shot what turned into a 55-minute adventure travel documentary that shows what that experience is like. And that's available on Vimeo. You can share the URL through the show notes there on the show. And it's just, so cool for me to be part of that project. First of all, also very interesting because I was only an American on a crew of all Brazilians. And so the production, it is mostly in Portuguese. And then, my dialogue is in English, and then there's subtitles, English subtitles for the rest of the athletes. But yeah, it was just a fantastic project to be part of. I learned a lot and had a fantastic time, and it turned out really, really well. So I think it really does show the long distance experience that I'm talking about.
Oh, that's awesome. So let me explain how to spell this and that kind of thing, and we'll put this in the show notes like you mentioned. So if anyone's listening to this and you can't write this down, just go to the adventuresportspodcast.com. It'll be in the show notes. But Surfin' Sim theme, you have to think Portuguese here. Sim is S-E-M and theme is F-I-M. So surfing, like you would expect, sim theme. And I imagine if you go to Vimeo and just search that, you're going to find it. But the Vimeo number, and I know that no one's going to remember this, is 220-552327. So if you went to Vimeo.com and put that number in, just go to the Adventure Sports Podcast and click the link. You'll save a lot of time. So that would be how to see that. And that's awesome. You said 55 minutes. I know how I want to spend my Friday night.
Yeah, well, thanks. I hope you enjoy it. I think you will. It's was shot by a young adventure sports director, Bruna Toledo, friend of mine. She's based out of Sao Paulo, and she did a fantastic job. And it's really quite a challenge. It's one of the things that I learned a lot about, being part of this production. It's really quite a challenge to shoot, first of all, even while you're traveling, let alone shoot while you're traveling mostly on the water. It's logistically quite complicated. And also to shoot, to show what we're doing, which is traveling down the coast at, 50, 70, 100 kilometers per day, to do that while you're shooting. Well, shooting takes a lot more time than just our normal process of riding and traveling. So it was quite an interest, quite a production, and I think it turned out really well, and we're all proud of the result. And then since then, I've been part of a couple other projects. Earlier this year, I was in the Philippines, as I mentioned, shooting a similar sort of thing, an adventure travel, primarily kitesurfing, documentary TV series, also backed by Canal Off, also a Brazilian production. It's funny how, I don't know, there's a lot of support for this kind of thing in Brazil, maybe not as much here in the States. I'm not sure if there's an equivalent sort of channel here. And that series is not yet, it's still in production, right? It's in edit and that sort of thing, and we won't see it for probably another few months. And then I'll be back in Brazil this September in just a couple months to shoot the continuation of this film that we just released. So again, if you look at a map, the most famous place for kitesurfing and windsurfing in northern Brazil is called Jericoacoara. And it's famous for a reason. It's incredibly beautiful. And although now it's quite a bit more developed than it was, say, 10, 15 years ago, it's still a very beautiful place. And it's kind of the center of this long stretch of coastline that I described earlier. And so this film that we just finished and we just talked about, we began to the east of Jerry, as it's known by, in short, and we passed Jerry, and then we continued to the west, and we stopped at this other little village called Atines. And the idea was that if this film was successful, and if we could secure the backing from Canal Off and some others, that we would produce or continue down the coast and into the Amazon. That's what we proposed, and we showed them the results. This film looks amazing, and they're very happy with it. And so we got the green light to turn it into a whole series. So in September, we're going to travel. We're going to meet up in Atines and continue west past the city of São Luís. And once you get past São Luís, you basically enter the Amazon coast. The coast changes completely. It's not sandy beach anymore. It's islands and mangroves and who knows what else. And we're going to continue down the coast to the mouth of the Amazon and then travel up the Amazon River.
Wow.
By kite.
How far do you think you're going to go up the river?
Well, the plan is to go as far as the city of Santarém, which and there's a town near there called Alter do Chão that I don't know, some people might know about, but it's I don't know, it's probably not quite half of the way up the Amazon. It's probably more like a third of the way up the Amazon. But the Amazon is a very, very long river, so we're still talking about like many hundreds of miles.
That is amazing. That is amazing. What a cool, epic thing. So there's got to be a way to get the English version of this. I mean, people can watch it on Vimeo, but that's something that everyone's going to want to see. How do they watch for it? How can they get more information?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think they can certainly follow my social media, my Instagram, for example. So Instagram.com/Bowen Dwelle, and also the Surf and Semfim site. So surfin, and it's not surfing with a G, it's a surfin Semfim, as you spelled out earlier, .com, surfandsemfim.com. one way or another, between those two, you'd definitely be able to keep track of these projects.
Cool. And Dwelle is spelled Dwelle. So Bowen Dwelle.
Yeah, BOWEN DWELLE. Exactly. That's how you'll. And I was blessed with a very unique name. Thank you to my parents. There is, cool. I mean, it can work against you in some scenarios, I suppose, but I am the only Bowen Dwelle on Earth, I believe, or certainly on the internet. So if you search Bowen Dwelle, you will find me.
I did find a Bob. I found a Bob Dwelle, but I think you might be right. You might be the only Bowen Dwelle out there. Well, to wrap up the show, I want to talk about this concept briefly that you had about the idea of intuition in athletics. So what are you getting at there?
Yeah, well, for me, one of the things that I have learned through my own process of becoming a part-time professional athlete at the age of, now I'm 47, so I'm not a lifelong hardcore athlete, but as I got more and more into kitesurfing, I started getting invited to participate in projects like these films we just talked about, et cetera, and really to pursue it, with a more athletic and kind of dedicated mindset. And one of the things that I discovered was that as I did that more and more, and not just kitesurfing, I do a lot of other athletic things as well. I'm a trail runner, I'm a paraglider pilot, an open water swimmer, kind of whatever I get my hands on in a way. The more time that I spent being athletic, and in particular being athletic outdoors, I found that my intuition got better. What do I mean? Intuition, I mean my ability to essentially to decide without deciding, right? To know what to do in any given moment without having to deliberate over what to do. And that, that what to do could be, it could be what to eat for breakfast, right? Or it could be, should I, this doesn't apply to me, but, should I marry this person, or something like that. I mean, intuition is one of the most powerful mechanisms that we have for interacting with the world. And I think many of us struggle with trying to make decisions. Decision making is hard, and it's not super fun really either. Whereas arriving at what feels and what to be the right course of action by intuition or gut feel or whatever you might call it, it feels it's more fun. It's easier. It's more fun. It feels good, and it's a great complement, of course, to intellectual decision making. So to have strong intuition is a very powerful thing, and I for one didn't really know how to strengthen my intuition until I kind of saw that happening through athletics. And so what I saw happening as I observed that happening and paid attention to it as it was happening, what I realized is that there's a very, very direct connection between athletics and intuition. And that is that simply by being active outside, because I think it's important, it's much more powerful to be active and athletic outside in the natural world as opposed to, in the gym, let's say.
Right.
And practicing some sport or some sort of thing that requires our mental but our physical attention as we get better, right? Or even just as we practice, as we do whatever that happens to be, whether it's, the simplest example for me is trail running. Okay, it's just running, but trail running. You're going along, the body, as you do it, your body gets better at doing it. It's not your mind. It's not like you're thinking about how do I run? Where do I put my feet? Your body does it automatically, and your body gets better at it without having to think about it. It gets better at it by practicing it, just by doing it, right? And what happens then is that your mind, I believe, and I saw this and see it happening in myself, that the mind sees the body, sees that happening to your body. The mind observes that and says, wow, geez, like the body here is getting better, is the body is making the right decisions without having to think about it. Maybe I can do that too.
Wow, that's really cool concept.
You see what I'm saying?
I do. Yeah. In a former life, I was a math teacher, and I've seen intuitive mathematicians. They get the answer without the process of going through the steps.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's kind of what you're talking about. It's not in that front part of the brain where you reason through everything step by step. Instead, you get to the back part of the brain that connects the dots so fast we can't see how it got to the end from the beginning, but there you are.
Exactly right. And there's tons of research that shows that in many cases the decisions that we think that we make have actually been made in that back part of the brain before the front part of the brain, gets a hold of the information. Then the front part gets a hold of it and says, hey, I made this cool decision. And actually, the brain chemistry already made the decision. Is the front part, the conscious part of the brain then observes it and kind of takes ownership of that. And not in every case, but certainly in perhaps half the cases or just as much. And so for me, noticing or seeing that pathway, that the mind can see this happening with the body, see the body just getting better at doing stuff. And then the mind says, well, the body can run along the trail or, kite surf down the coast for hours at a time and do the right thing without really having to think about it, right? Your mind is often free to think about other things while you're out there doing these. And many people say that they get their best thinking done while they're running or cycling, doing whatever else. And so then again, the mind learns how intuition works, and that intuition does work by observing the intuitive movement of the body. That physical competence leads to intuitive mental confidence. I think there's a direct connection there.
Yeah, I love it. It's the first time that I've had a guest talk about that angle on it. A lot of people have talked about getting in the zone, right? Getting really focused, and others have talked about what you just described, being able to really think when they're on a long run or a long hike, and how that really changed them. But to make that connection to intuition and intuitive thought and developing that skill set, that's what you're doing. You're developing a skill set that all people have, but they may not even realize it. But you found a way to develop it, and I can see all the benefits. There's a book there, Bowen. Are you going to write it for us so we can read it?
Thank you. Yeah, it's that has occurred to me certainly, and I am working on the outline for the working title of the Decide Nothing Toolkit.
I love it. Decide Nothing Toolkit. Okay, well, keep us informed, because we want to have you back on to talk specifically about that when you get farther down the road on that project. That's awesome.
Well, fantastic. Well, I'm glad that that the idea resonates with you, and that's really encouraging. Thanks.
Well, the reason it resonates so much is because we know the amazing benefits of adventure sports, and it doesn't, like you illustrated, it doesn't really matter what the sport is. If you get out there and you're active and you're connecting with nature and you're enjoying yourself, then the benefits are vast. But to talk about this particular benefit, it's something we haven't done a lot on the show, and that's why I connect to it so much. How cool is that? I really like that. I really like that. Well, man, we have run completely out of time, but it was worth the extra moments to hear about that. I really enjoy it. Bowen, thank you for coming on the Adventure Sports Podcast and sharing this world with us. Man, kite surfing and adventure sports in general, and how you can use kite surfing to travel. I mean, everything about this is so cool. So thanks, man, for sharing with us.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks for having me, Kurt. It's been a real pleasure to talk with you and share a bit about kite surfing. And I encourage you and everyone else out there to give it a shot.
Yeah, it is on my list, and that's the biggest problem with hosting this show is my list is way, way too long. But it is certainly on my list. I appreciate that. Well, Bowen, thank you very much again. And for all of our listeners out there, man, kite surfing, how cool is this? Remember, until the next show, to get out there and have some fun.
Don't miss Monday's episode with Carl Saba. He is the current Pacific Crest Trail speed record holder, and it's gonna be good. Until then, guys, get out and have some fun.